Questions? Thank you, Delana. And we are recording the meeting. So for those that are just coming on, again, please add your name, your pronouns, and where you're coming from into the chat so we can see who's here. And then if you want to make any changes to your Zoom name, you can do that by clicking the three dots in the right-hand top corner of your square and selecting rename. Our community commitments for this Advocates Network space are to move up and move back. This is also referred to sometimes as make space and take space. So we invite you all to think about how you normally show up in spaces like this and either push yourself to speak up a little bit more or make sure you're making space for other folks to chime in as well. Of course, none of us know everything, but together we know a lot, and we're here to learn together. And in our Advocates Network meetings and our work together, we like to presume positive intent in our interactions, but also acknowledge the impact of our actions and our words on each other. And I know we have quite a few new faces on the call today, which is super exciting. Thanks everyone who's new and attending their first Advocates Network meeting. Advocates Network is a group from Great Education Colorado in a space brought together by Great Ed. And our vision as an organization is that through public education, all students across the state, regardless of their zip code, learning needs, language, identities, the color of their skin, or any part of their background, graduates prepared to lead their best life. And our mission is to harness the power of grassroots activism and diverse, inclusive networks to guarantee that public schools all across the state are welcoming and adequately, equitably, and sustainably funded. And our Advocates Network, which is this meeting that you're all on today, so you're all part of our Advocates Network, is our community where aspiring change makers become action ambassadors for public education. So together, we're working for public schools that are welcoming and adequately, equitably, and sustainably funded. Through Advocates Network, Great Ed is preparing all of you and all the folks who are not here on the call to become confident education advocates. And of course, I know a lot of you on here are already huge education advocates, so thank you. And this is just a sort of outline of the work that Great Ed does before we jump into the content for our meeting today. As I said, our North Star is securing sufficient funding and supports for Colorado public schools to be able to meet the needs of all of our students. And we have a couple different buckets of work that this encompasses. So this includes our Get It Done campaign, our work to get fiscal reform on the ballot, our work to fight privatization and promote public education, and a special project we have called the Every Student Welcome Network, which is a community building space to ensure that all Colorado students feel welcomed, safe, seen, supported, and engaged to thrive. All right, so to start us off today, we want to turn it over to folks on the call. I know that some of you were able to attend Great Ed's Advocacy Day last Thursday, and we'd love to hear from you about moments that you really enjoyed during the day, maybe something that you came away with. If you have any constructive feedback for us as we think about future events, we welcome that as well. And I'd also love to know whether you got to speak with your legislators by the end of the day, and if you felt like you had enough like actionable information and good action items. So with that, I will go on mute, and maybe Christy, you can kick us off.
Hi, everyone. I thought it was wonderful. And there were a lot of actionable items. I was able to talk to my representative. My senator was not available, but I was able to meet him a couple days ago. And trying to think what else. The food was awesome, and I thought it was good work.
Whoops. All right, I've somehow lost my screen, so I can't see. But would someone else like to share?
Well, I was not at Advocacy Day, but what I would like to share is the reason I wasn't there is I was meeting with a group called the Colorado Association of Retired Americans. It is a group of retired AFL-CIO people from all various unions, and I met with them and did a whole talk about our initiative, 195, and got a number of people to sign it. So hopefully it was just as good as Advocacy Day.
Awesome, Gary. Thank you so much. And I actually heard from, I think, another volunteer, Sally, who I believe was at that meeting as well. Um,
Ed Ogden,
and
Sally and Ed Ogden.
I think so. Does that sound right, Jerry? Maybe you met them. But either way,
Yeah, I
I'm
did
really
meet
glad
a
that you
few
were
people
there.
that I did meet some people, at least two that had petitions, but they didn't have them. They were carrying petitions, but didn't have them with them.
So you got the signatures. Awesome.
I got the signatures.
I'll just say about the Advocacy Day that it was we trained a lot of people. We got the engagement. Senator Kip came over. Representative Hamrick came over. Representative Bacon couldn't because the long bill was already going long. Talk about that a little bit more. But it is just interested to hear, Jerry, know why you weren't there. And this isn't a call out in any way, but just um, thinking about how we can continue to make something like an advocacy day as accessible as possible. And if an advocacy day isn't the kind of thing that you would that works into your life, if we are providing you with the kinds of opportunities that do work better into your life.
I think that was an invitation for feedback, Lisa. Was that right?
It was absolutely, and for people who were not there, who can also uh, help us just toward our ultimate goal, which is meeting people where they are and making sure that they can get their voice into the Capitol and heard at the in prep for the ballot box.
I'll say hello. This is Danielle Varda, and I will apologize. I'm driving between dropping kids on and off, so I'm really just listening. I haven't attended this meeting before, but I saw the invite and I wanted to. And I only got to join at midday for this very reason, Lisa, that I had to work in the morning and I just couldn't get there and take all that time off. But it was great to join the group when I did, and actually, I hope to be there one day, but on the other side of that door. But I learned a lot just by being in that lobby area about how to approach people, and watching some other folks do that was pretty inspiring. So I think for me, it was just taking off that much time is a little bit, but I appreciate the opportunities that you all provide.
We are glad you were there and know that you might be on the other side of the conversation someday not too far from now.
I hope so.
All right. Well, if anyone else has other thoughts, we would love to see them in the chat. And of course, you can always send me an email as well. I will put my email address in the chat. But for the sake of time, I will move us on into the rest of our content for the day. So, Lisa, I will pass it to you to share some state and federal education and funding news.
All right, and happy to have others add in here as you know about things. The main thing to talk about in the legislature right now, of course, is the long bill. And let's see, I lost you. Kristen, I think you're not sharing anymore. At least I'm not seeing it. Anybody else?
Okay.
So the legislature at this point, the long bill came out about a week and change after the March economic forecast came out, which told them, how much did they have to cut and what they had to work on. And so they were working on a shortfall of about $1.2 billion below just keeping up. Just happened again, Kristen. Uh, just below what is necessary to keep up with inflation and case growth, like not just in schools, but in corrections and healthcare, et cetera. So this is about the third time that they've had to cut below keeping up with inflation. So it's been tough. The good news is they worked pretty hard to make sure that they avoided structural cuts to K-12. So for instance, the BS factor is still at 0. And they are continuing current law. They chose the forecast that indicated that we would raise enough money to continue the implementation of House Bill 1448, which I think this is the third year of its implementation, and each year it's supposed to grow by a certain percent. So this year was supposed to go up by 15%, 15% of $500 million. The idea being putting more money into certain factors like a new special education factor and ELL increase and at-risk increase. So they stuck with that. They stuck with the student averaging that was current law, which I believe is 3 years. They were talking about starting to sort of capture the specific ownership tax, which is the other local taxes come from property taxes, and then there's this smaller specific ownership tax, which you pay on your car every year. And what they were looking at doing was saying, oh, the specific ownership tax is actually, we'll add it to the property taxes in a way that we don't do now so that it will look like we have to spend less state dollars to keep the budget stabilization at 0. You don't have to, the bottom line is there were a lot of districts who it would have been a cut. It just would have been a straight cut. It was just trying to slide money that is currently not in the School Finance Act into the School Finance Act to make it easier for the legislature to not have a BS factor. So they've held off on that, but next year's going to be rough again unless we do something we'll talk about later in this meeting. K-12 spending is going to increase by about 184 million, which isn't quite 2%. And there's a whole lot of things that go into how that all adds up. But good news, but next slide. There we go. This budget is based on a 2.3% inflation rate. Raise your hand if you think that inflation is going to be 2.3% in the remainder of this year. So the way it works is that they were able to meet the requirements of inflation growth in the base through the new School Finance Act. They could afford that because the base is only growing by 2.3%. If it's more like the base has to grow by 3% or 4%, then in the course of this next school year, they're going to have to bring in a BS factor, or they're going to have to do rescissions. So it is a very, very optimistic. It's also not, it's not making the assumption that there's going to be a recession, which, if there is, and when you think about the ski season and the upcoming rafting season, and just sort of what's going on, the potential for fire, this is a very optimistic budget, and we appreciate that they kept K-12 as whole as they could, but we just need to be really clear on the fact that next year is going to be rough. Another reason that next year is going to be rough is because in order to actually keep this, to do the increases from 1448 and not have a BS factor, they really had to dip into the state education fund, which is really one-time dollars. So next year, that's savings that we aren't going to have. So we'll have a deeper hole for school funding next year. And they did have to shave numerous grant programs, Counselor Corps, some others, to try and make everything fit. So the House passed it on Saturday. You may have seen that one of the legislators demanded that it be read in its entirety, which they did using AI, and it took 15 hours and over $10,000 of taxpayer dollars. So they didn't finish this until Saturday. It's in the Senate now, which should be able to finish it by Friday. Generally, things don't change a whole lot. The JBC has made their decisions, and even if there are amendments adopted, it'll go back basically to what it was. So that will be done, but that has just sucked up all the energy and the time of the legislature for these 2 weeks. So one other thing, and then I want to open up the next slide. I want to open up to other people who have other kinds of other education issues that they want to talk about, ask about, whatever. Is that Senate Bill 26-135 is CEA's cut the ropes measure, which would increase general funds for public education by 2% annually. That'd be about 200 million. That asterisk is there is because it's only if there is surplus available. And actually, I understand that there are changes that they are discussing in the Senate. It passed the Senate Finance. It is now waiting for Senate Appropriations before it goes to the floor of the Senate, and then it'll have to go to the House. They are talking about making some changes to ensure that there's more money that would initially go to education. But again, so that's in flux. It hasn't happened yet because the guy who is drafting that amendment is working on the long bill. So this is how everything gets all jammed up. Great Ed has endorsed it, and if both of these things pass, one has the prospect of really bringing in, just making sure we don't do what we did for the last 3 years, which is give back $8 billion in Tabor surplus without having ever addressed the damage done by the BS factor. So if we had done this 10 years ago, we could have invested that money, not just in education, but we would be in a much, much better place for all of our services. And so over time, that will grow. The surplus always comes back. We may not have one for a couple years now, but that always comes back. So you have that long term plus the get it done, not the get it done, the graduated income tax initiative 195. Those two things put together would mean that today's elementary school students could graduate from fully funded high schools. And that is what we're shooting for. So that's where that's where the cut the rope stands. And I'll leave it there because we're going to move off of the legislative session. If anybody has questions or thoughts that they want to share about this wonderful legislative session. All right, we will move on to, unless there's something in the chat that I didn't see. Nope. Okay.
Well, I was
Go
just
ahead,
going to say,
Christy.
I was at a town hall on Sunday, and it was all the folks from Adams County. And I don't know how to pronounce his name properly, but Kenny Van Nugen,
Okay.
Nguyen? I don't know.
It's
House District
Nguyen.
33.
It's Win.
Win. Thank you, Evie. When he got up to speak, he did talk about 195 and 135. He talked about both of them, and in very optimistic and hopeful terms. And I was glad to hear him bring those up jointly.
It is very cool. And there are a lot of legislators who are both sponsors of 135 and carrying petitions for 195. And I do think that if ever there was a year that this could happen, it's this one. So
And
thanks, Christy.
yeah, Lisa, I mean, I'm still frustrated with CEA. Obviously, they're behind the cut, they're pushing to cut the ropes, and I get it. But they still have not really done anything about 195. And I know I've spoken to Kevin, and his thing is because the first line says, "Do you want to increase taxes?" And of course, you have to go past that first line. But like you said, the two pass, it's going to be an amazing thing for our kids. We have delegate assembly this weekend, and I'm bringing petitions, even though CEA hasn't endorsed it. I don't know if I'll get kicked down or not.
I so appreciate that, Jerry. And I think that's what needs to happen is that the rank and file need to be out there, supporting it. And here is what I think is the response to the shall taxes be raised by, number one, that will always be the case. So if we're saying we're never going to raise taxes, that is not good news for the students of Colorado. The second thing is, how much would you have to pay? How much would we have to invest in a campaign to make it so that the very last thing that every single voter sees before they fill in the bubble is something that shows them they get a tax cut? So what we've found, that's why we are at 5539 is, yes, it says shall taxes be increased, but we passed Proposition GG, and that is why the last thing that you see, unless you're making over $500,000, is that you are getting a tax cut. So I think we did GG for a reason. It was this. This is the year to do it. This is the right electorate.
And the other frustrating thing is I literally, as the meeting started, I'm trying to finish my Colorado taxes, and I'm getting a $70 Tabor refund. It's like, really, we got a $1.5 billion deficit, and I'm getting $70 Tabor refund? It makes no sense.
It makes no sense. And if anybody wants to give their Tabor refund to Great Education Colorado, that is a good way to work out your frustration, but just a suggestion.
Lisa, I have a question. This is Danielle. And I'm parked. So
Good. I'm glad you're
I
safe.
don't know if this is the right place to ask this, but something I've been thinking a lot about is I was on the Jeffco school board and I follow very closely what's happening, for example, in Jefferson County, and I don't know across other districts. There's great work happening right now to determine whether we should put an MLO on the ballot. And I just wondered, I keep thinking, well, if we do that, is it going to jeopardize, our success in these other initiatives and vice versa? Like, are those initiatives going to, and so I just wondered if you all talk about that, I don't really know what my question is. I think I'm just a little worried about.
It's a great point to bring up, and it is really difficult because I've been talking to Tracy Rainey about this, and districts all across the state are dealing with this because even though the BS factor didn't go up, most districts are going to have to cut anyway because The inflation rate that they get. I was just talking to Dr. Pilch in Greeley, who is facing a $9 million gap
Yeah.
because their health insurance went up. It was going to go up 27%. They switched, so they're not just 19%. And so everybody is dealing with these cuts. And so it is an absolutely rational thing to say we got to do something and we got to make sure that something works, right?
Hmm.
And so this is the part of the conversation where I say this is Doug Bruce's world we just live in it. I mean, that's what Doug Bruce intended, is that we're always up against each other, that if we do something at the state level, what should we do at the local level? And I think that this really is a time where we can say, I mean, each one of them really is separate. One is you may not get Tabor surpluses in the future, but woohoo, you got $70 this year. Another one is saying you're going to get a tax cut, but we're going to make our tax system more fair. And the people who just got huge tax cuts from the federal and because of the federal level at the state level, we're going to have them pay more. And by the way, your mill levy, we need to do that as well. So, I don't know if some want to think about if you could do an MLO that says if Initiative 195, which will have a different number, by the way, but if Protect Colorado's Future passes, we don't have to increase the MLO by, we can reduce the size of the MLO, or, I don't know how you can sort of work that out, but just like my point with Jerry and what Kevin said about, it says shall taxes be raised by, this will always be the case. The more desperate schools are and to do right by students, the more likely it is that all these things are going to be in conflict. And we just have to say, not, can these pass? What's going to happen? Which is a question that we all have to think about. But also, what am I going to do to make sure that they all pass? Because they all
Yeah.
need to pass.
Yeah.
Christy?
I was just going to make a similar comment in that when you're talking about your MLO, I would say to also refer to Initiative 95. Say most of the people whose taxes are going to go up due to the MLO will be getting, albeit small, somewhat of an income tax break on the other side. I know it doesn't offset it, but it's still something I think worth putting in the conversation.
Yeah. I was just going to respond and just say I really appreciate that kind of laying out of all those tensions, because it's sometimes we get really focused on one or almost like ignore the others so that we can be successful in one. But I think telling this whole story, and then Christy with that, like those caveats of where the gives and takes are, I think that's the challenge of helping a voter know like what the big picture is for students, but then also how it all kind of comes together in a formula. But we don't even know which one's going to be on the ballot
Right.
yet. So
No,
um,
that's exactly right.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm really glad you brought that up, Danielle. Okay, moving on to federal. And thanks for a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I just, one more thought on that is I just dropped in the chat um, Great Ed's recent blog post about just to add more information about what Lisa said, how SB 26-135 passing with Initiative 195, the graduated income tax, is really best case scenario for students. And I think there are some great talking points in that article that you could apply to an MLO situation or, something else that's happening. And as you're getting questions from folks in your community, when you're talking about the graduated income tax and any other measures, just to, you know, uh, emphasize the point that Lisa said, the question is not like, could they pass, but what are we all going to be doing? And there's a little bit more information in there as well. Um, All right, I'm so sorry. For some reason, I can't see anyone. So, Lisa, I'm going to rely on you to help let me know if my screen is not sharing or if
You
someone
got, you're
has a
right on the
question.
federal tax voucher program. So many of you have signed this petition that we've already delivered, but we're continuing to gather signatures. We've already delivered it to Governor Polis, who said he is going to opt into this voucher program that'll take public dollars and give it to private institutions. We're waiting to see what probably in July, the rules will come out that will show whether uh, public schools could even get their foot in the door for some of this money. But in any event, we asked it's continuingly to be relevant because our next governor will have the choice of getting us out. And Attorney General Weiser has said he will not opt in, he will opt out of it. Senator Bennett has said he wants to make sure that the dollars, if it goes forward, would go to public, not private institutions. So, and you can see we have a blog post on that too, of what they said, what their exact words are. But so that's the Colorado, should we opt in or out? If you go to the next slide, Kristen. There is now a Senator Mark Kelly, we were told was going to do it today. We don't have confirmation that he did, but Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona was going to file a bill in the Senate to repeal the voucher program that was put in place by the One Big Beautiful Boondoggle. And we just learned today that Senator Bennett is a co-sponsor. I think our collective advocacy had a lot to do with that because we were pushing on him to what are you going to say if when you're governor, and now we were able to say there's something that you can do while you're senator. And so he is an original co-sponsor. We have not heard the same about Senator Hickenlooper. If you have any connections with Senator Hickenlooper, please write a note and tell him that you expect him to sign on to Senator Kelly's bill to repeal it. He did vote against, he voted for an amendment to the Reconciliation Act to take it out. So there should be no problem in saying you didn't like it before, now let's repeal it. Will it pass? No. But at least we can start this motion so that next year maybe we can get it repealed. And what comes next?
I'll just jump in quickly and say that Great Ed has officially endorsed this federal Keep Public Funds in Public Schools Act. And if you are part of an organization or know of an organization that you would like to see also endorse, I
Colorado
just
PTA?
dropped Colorado PTA. Just dropped the link for that in the chat, as well as the 2-pager that I have a screenshot of here on the slides. Okay, I think this is me. So this slide will probably look familiar to many of you who came to Advocacy Day or have been at a recent presentation of ours. But as you know, Lisa has painted a picture of the school funding reality and policy reality in Colorado, and we understand that we are facing a lot of challenges as a state and from the federal administration as well. So the two sort of areas that Great Education Colorado is focusing on right now are the two buckets of our work. One of which is keeping the adequacy studies as our North Star. I know a lot of you on this call have heard us talk over and over about these adequacy studies, but for anyone new here, the state of Colorado, our state legislature commissioned 2 independent research firms to conduct adequacy studies and to really examine how much more we would need to invest as a state in order for our students to be able to achieve the standards that we have set for them. And so those studies were released in January of 2025, and they found that we are somewhere between $3.5 and $4.1 billion behind adequacy. So while we know that because of our budget shortfall and our just current situation in Colorado, that it's not as if we're able to advocate and get that funding overnight, that extra $3 to $4 billion, just because we're in this um, time of having to make cuts and to limit our funding, doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep in mind the results of this adequacy studies for ourselves, for our students and our communities, for teachers and administrators, and for our legislators as well. We need to sort of keep that top of mind for everyone, that just because things are bad now doesn't mean that we can't still be like imagining and working towards something in the future. So one bucket of our work is connected to the adequacy studies, of course, protecting current funding while also maintaining that commitment to implementing and funding the recommendations of those studies. And then the other bucket of work, which Lisa started to talk about and we'll touch on more before the end of this meeting today, is thinking about opportunities for fiscal reform through the ballot to raise additional revenue every year for K through 12 public education. And of course, we know, it took us a while to get into this situation. We're not going to fix all of our problems in 2026, unfortunately. But these are the two big things that we're focusing on as an organization and as our advocates network. And these are all the other things that we are keeping in mind and that we will continue working on so we can get to this sparkly public school system where all of our Colorado students thrive. So to this end, this is an action that we have for folks to take regarding that first bucket of the adequacy studies. I know several of you that are here today were at the Capitol last year when Great Ed had our advocacy day and actually heard the Senate pass this resolution committing to fully and fairly funding public schools. It was bipartisan. It was, very exciting and a real boost for education. That our state senators were, again, committing to the adequacy studies. So we are asking our representatives in the state house to do the same this year. And let me drop this link in the chat as well. So you can go ahead and scan that QR code that's on the slide or follow the link that I just put in the chat to ask your House representative to do the same. And Great Ed is working closely with Representatives Eliza Hamrick and Lori Goldstein to basically pass the same resolution that was passed in the Senate last year. And so we had, I think Representative Hamrick was at our advocacy day on Thursday, talking about how excited she is about this. And we encourage you to let them know that this is important. Again, just because we're in this moment of crisis doesn't mean that we have to forget like long-term planning or forego that visioning for what we want for our students and our communities. Okay, and now I want to share some information about the other bucket of work, which is fiscal reform on the ballot. So Lisa touched on the measure that CEA is working on having the state legislature refer to the ballot. I know a lot of you here are familiar with that. And we are going to spend most of the rest of our time today talking about Protect Colorado's Future, which is the coalition that is working on the graduated income tax. Sorry, this is a little bit fuzzy. Truth be told, I just screenshotted it from a different presentation. But the Protect Colorado's Future Coalition now has, I believe, 22 steering committee members. Great Ed, of course, is on the executive committee, which we're very proud to be an organization that is leading on this. We have other friends from the education space, including Colorado PTA. There are organizations here that work with children and young people. there are organizations working on disability rights and food access and reproductive rights and policy organizations. So we have a really big tent of organizations that believe that now is the time to be working on this for all the reasons that Lisa talked about and laid out. We're facing, really big challenges, but that also means that we have some really big opportunities to turn the crisis into like a moment of action. So we, again, are really excited that the coalition has so many different areas of expertise, that we're operating on so many different levels. We have membership organizations, advocacy organizations, and policy groups. And again, we've all come together because we think that now's the time, and that this is the graduated income tax is really the best thing for our communities. So as a quick refresher of what this would mean, our proposal, Initiative 195, would strike the sentence from Tabor, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, that requires all income to be taxed at the same rate. So it will be an amendment, and we are striking language from the Constitution, but not adding anything. So all of the rest of the policy will be added to statute. This proposal would actually decrease taxes on those that, for people that make less than $500,000 a year, which is 97% of us in Colorado. And so it's only folks in that top 2 to 3% that would actually see an increase in their taxes. We know that this measure would raise at least $2 billion, with the potential to raise up to $2.7 billion of new revenue that would supplement, not supplant, funding for K-12 public education, healthcare, and childcare. And just something that I have found useful to note is that it would apply the same structure to corporations. So if someone is making the case to you, like, what about small businesses or that kind of thing, you can confidently tell them that small businesses making less than $500,000 a year will also see a tax cut, as will, again, 97% of Coloradans. This graduated income tax proposal also requires an annual audit to ensure accountability of where the funding is going, to make sure it's within those 3 buckets. And this is important for some folks that this proposal also does not change your Tabor rebates. This is the full language that's on all of our petitions, and that will hopefully appear on the ballot. And I won't read through all of this, but as you can see, it does come with a chart here. So people can very quickly look at their income bracket and see what their, on average, what the tax change would look like for folks in their bracket. And I will also say that the Protect Colorado's Future Coalition just put a calculator on our website that I'm dropping the link in the chat, where you can type in your income and see, again, obviously it doesn't know like your deductions or your very personal circumstances, but you can see in general, like the tax cut that would come based on your income. And then this is just a chart that we have found helpful, and some folks have asked about. As a reminder, a graduated income tax is not a tax cliff, but it's like additive. So for everyone in Colorado, the first $25,000 of our income under this new measure would be taxed at 3.7%. And then let's say you make somewhere in this range, let's say you make $50,000. Your first $25,000 would be taxed at 3.7%, and your second $25,000 would be taxed at 4.2%, and so on and so forth. So it's only folks in this higher bracket that would start to actually see a net increase in their taxes. So sorry if you can hear my cat freaking out in the background. Um, some other information that we just want to share quickly with folks is some messages that have been helpful and that the coalition has worked on as we're talking about this. And so, of course, we know that different things work better with different individuals or communities. But some of our main messaging points is that this measure is really addressing or starting to address our unfair tax system. We also know that, of course, our families and our individuals, folks of all ages, need um, more access to community services and public services, and that right now our current tax policy means that we're limited in that way. So that's another sort of message that we're encouraging folks to use. And then my favorite is that this measure offers both hope and accountability. So again, we spend a lot of time talking about the deficit and the shortfall and how we, even how the adequacy studies show how far behind we are in education. And it's also helpful to frame this in terms of like what we could see in Colorado with this change. In terms of the campaign, we are in this phase right now of gathering signatures. I know a bunch of you on this call are signature gatherers, which is super exciting, and we'll have a chance for you all to weigh in a moment. But I was just looking at the calendar, and if I'm counting correctly, we have 13 weeks until July 13th, which is the official deadline from the campaign to collect our signatures. So we do have a couple of months, but I feel like hearing it as 13 weeks makes it feel a little bit closer and a little bit urgent, which we know we can do this, but we know it is urgent as well. And then the absolute last day that we have to submit our signatures as a campaign to the Secretary of State is August 3rd. So between July 13th and August 3rd, we'll be preparing our documents to submit to the SOS. We'll be, obtaining and verifying those last couple signatures that are rolling in. And those of you who have seen this before will remember that we need to gather at least 125,000 signatures to get on the ballot. We also need at least 2% of registered voters from all 35 Senate districts. I want to be clear that 2% of registered voters in those 35 Senate districts is a lower, I can't remember exactly what the number is, but it's less than 125,000. So we need to achieve like both of these standards to get on the ballot. And then hopefully in August, we will officially get on the ballot, and then we'll be doing get out the vote efforts for the following months until Election Day in November. Yes, so the point of me sharing that, as Lisa said, is that every signature is great no matter where you are. I've talked to some people who are saying, like some folks who live in Denver, and they're like, well, if you have a lot of people from Denver, then I'll go elsewhere. And it's true that we do need more volunteers and organizational partners in more rural areas of the state. But really, every signature from every Senate district counts and will help us cross the threshold. I want to share some updates on that I think are exciting about where the campaign stands. So we officially started gathering signatures the very end of February or early March. So it's been about a month and a half. And at this point, we have 19 petition hubs across the state. We have over 500 people that are circulating petitions, and we've handed out over 1,600 petitions, which, if I do some quick calculator math, each petition has room for 40 signatures. So if all of these petitions were to be completely filled out, which is a big if, that would be 64,000 signatures with a few months left. So we are feeling excited about like where things stand, and also know that we don't have time to let up. We were very excited about the No King's Day events that happened across Colorado a few weeks ago. No Signature Gathering campaign has really had this sort of opportunity where large groups of people that would probably agree with us are all in the same place, all across the state. So I know some of you here were gathering signatures at No King's Day, and all told, the coalition had people at over 30 events statewide. We also, of course, Great Ed had our Advocacy Day last week. We trained 13 new petition circulators and handed out 36 petitions, some of which are going far south into the Eastern Plains, which is amazing. And then over the weekend, we had the PTA convention where we handed out 115 petitions and got over 60 new petition circulators, which is super exciting. So at this point, we have a lot of petitions out in the field, and we are instituting our first callback of the campaign on Friday, May 8th. So if you have petitions that are sitting around your house, or you know someone else that has petitions that are sitting around, please send them back in. Between now and the 8th, we are getting our signature verification processes up and running, and really wanting to start calculating like how many signatures we have in our various Senate districts, and just like tabulate our progress, because again, we know we have a lot of petitions out there. Anecdotally, I know a lot of them are completed, and so we just need to get them back into the campaign's hands so that we can do this calculation. So those of you who have petitions will hear more about this, but please just keep in mind that Friday, May 8th is that first deadline. I want to give a quick shout out to folks in our Advocates Network, some of whom are on this call right now, who have really stepped up to support Protect Colorado's Future and Great Ed's efforts in this signature gathering. So we have a number of folks who are volunteering as petition hubs out of their home or maybe their organization. Dawn Fritz, DJ Anderson, Jan Tanner, Kelly Pointer, Christy Hargrove, Leah Helm, Lisa Webster, Tessa Kirchner, and Wendy Reimel. Caitlin Fitzpatrick is also a notary, as are some of these petition hub folks. And then we have some very dedicated signature gatherers in Evie Hudak and Tom Griggs, who each have already submitted several petitions back to Great Ed, which is awesome. And this map here that I screenshotted is what the coalition is using to denote where our hubs and our notaries are, and the green ones are both hubs, petition hubs and notaries. So we are increasing our presence across the state. As you can see, I need to add Crested Butte in here still, but you can also see there are parts of the state that we have not reached yet as far as a petition hub. And so if you have thoughts about that, please do let us know. We'd love to have more folks volunteer as petition hubs or as notaries. All right, so a few things here on this slide. I will drop the links in the chat for the trainings and for upcoming volunteer opportunities. But some of the things that we are, we have a lot of opportunities for people to get involved in different ways, depending on what's the best fit for your schedule or your capacity or your abilities. So we believe that everyone can be a signature gatherer. It's not as scary or as hard as you may think, and we have a great community of folks. There's a link, this QR code, and the first link that I just put in the chat is where you can sign up to get trained with the coalition if you have not already. And then this events QR code, which is the second one in the chat, is events that the coalition has identified where we're looking for people to help us gather signatures. So if you're already trained or if you're about to get trained, those are great links to hold in your back pocket if you're looking for ideas of where to take your petition. And then if you want to support the campaign in other or in additional ways, some things you can do include requesting a presentation for a group that you're part of. This could be your PTA, this could be your book club, it could be really anything where you think that people would be interested in knowing more and wanting to help out. You can help us request endorsements from organizations or elected officials from organizations, again, that you're part of or a donor to or a fan of. For folks who are preferring to sort of like stay in one place and support the campaign, or if for some reason you're not able to gather signatures, another way you can support is by helping us verify signatures. So what that looks like is coming into Great Education Colorado's office or another one of our verification hubs and going through the petition to look people up in the voter file and like check off that they have signed a petition for this to help us. That's really where we calculate like how many people we have in each Senate district. And then, as I said, we're always looking for more folks to help be notaries or act as a petition hub for the campaign. So if you are interested in supporting in any of these ways, or even just want to learn more, please send me an email. My email is in the chat. It's kristenw@greateducation.org. And we are just super excited to see the ways that the education community has stepped up to the plate. I know there are a lot of really dedicated school board members and volunteers and school administrators and teachers that are working with us on this, and a bunch of you here today. So thank you all so much. All right, and I know we have just 1 minute left, but I wanted to give some time, and if folks feel like staying on for a few extra minutes, please feel free. Wanted to just open it up for conversation for those of you who are signature gatherers or otherwise involved in the campaign to learn or to share some points about what you've enjoyed so far, what's been going well, and what do you want other people on this call who may not be volunteering with us yet to hear? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Lisa, if you could call on folks. And yes, Juan, I will email you about presenting at a board meeting. That would be great.
Go ahead, Lee.
Hi, everyone. So my house district, I just got off the call with her, and chair wants to. I don't know if she's saying this out loud, but maybe I don't know. But she asked about 195 and where, and how can we get petitions? And she said, well, we can send them to your house. I'm like, I said, well, she said, well, how about we get you in a space like Panera Bread is by my house. That's a great place. There's a really cool beer garden that um opened up here. Well, not it's like a beer bar, whatever. It's pretty cool. They do a lot of stuff. The owner, I've met her during my campaign. Um, she's definitely would be open to that, and at some of the really cool coffee shops in our community. So we're just going to work together. That will be a place where I can get signatures. People want to stop by, and also support the space, and also pass out um, what's it called, petitions. And so that was just a really great idea. Low level. I like coffee, I like beer. Wow. So we can definitely do that. So it'd be a fun opportunity, to meet new people, and so that's what we're going to start working on, like, for next week.
And democratic meetings are a great place to go, not just to get signatures, but also to hand out petitions. Jerry, did I see that you were sort of raising your hand?
Well, I'm thinking of down the road, assuming we get the signatures, they get verified. How are we doing on funding for the campaign? You know, because it's going to
Um,
be expensive.
I have two meetings in the next 2 days with some or all of my executive committee partners on Protect Colorado's Future with foundations. So we are working hard at getting the foundations to understand that if we don't do this year, the demand for their services is going to be completely overwhelmed when we're cutting everything next year. We have Rose Community Foundation has been supportive. Caring for Colorado's Foundation is supportive. We're working on getting Gary, Colorado Health Foundation, et cetera. We're going to be speaking to the Colorado Democracy Alliance, so we're working on that. I am happy to say that we have $600,000 already to do the signature gathering, and the signature gathering is the great thing about doing it the way we do it, especially through volunteers, is that the value of those each dollar, because volunteer signatures aren't free, but they are long lasting. And so all the people that you talk to at the retired labor thing are now thinking, oh, this is Jerry's thing, and they'll make it their thing. And so these early investments have a lot of ROI. As I mentioned, the table has, is incredibly powerful, like $3 million in-kind contribution, really. But we are working very hard on that, on making sure that people understand the importance. And one of the things that we're starting to work on too is getting people to make pledges once we're on the ballot. Because one of the problems that we have, and we have been through this time and time again, is all these people are like, well, I think I like it. It's a good idea, but who else is giving you money? And they're sort of being like, are you gonna? Because I'm gonna, should we, are we? So if we can just start getting people to say, I will do it if as matching dollars, if other people step up, that it means that we can start off with a significant amount of money. And they're going to spend a ton of money against us, but once again, they're always going to spend a ton of money against us. And right now, please protect the wealthy from taxes is not a very popular message. And we'll see if we're working together with CEA/NEA, that would be good.
So I've only been on two of these calls, and one of them was with another superintendent. It was a small group of us. For me, I noticed your map. There's hardly anything over on the eastern side of the state and anything in the southeastern corners. My experience here at 4 years is pretty simple. Anything that says increased tax, they don't care that it applies to them or not. It is a no. And a few of the things that I've heard over the course of my 4 years here in Colorado is one, there's no trust in what legislation is going to do with those funds. And there's been go look at it. Our county voted no on Proposition MM. And that's just kind of a here's an actual here's something that was designed and set up so that we could ensure that students, regardless of socioeconomic status, were going to receive free meals. And this county voted no. I want to take an active role in just being supportive as much as I possibly can in this. That's why I think if you told our board, you may be able to find someone who'd be willing to become the hub and collect signatures. The reason for that is sometimes this stuff is a lot better received when it's coming from someone that they have relationships with.
Absolutely.
And here I am, a guy who is 4 years in, very few people know anything about me. And since I've been here, I've gone after 2 bond attempts that failed completely. And then I've also been someone who's been out front and very vocal about our facilities and kind of what we're looking at. And so we are doing everything that we can to try to maintain where we're at. So know that I support this. I'm 100%. If you need me to bring you guys in and provide you a space, I'll see what we can do and make sure that legally we're meeting all the requirements.
Right.
I will do whatever I can, and I'm okay with that. I think this is going to be really key to public education. And yeah, I think this idea that, I don't know, I think, so I've got to get off this call, but I want to tell you guys a little, like, just a fun experiment that I ran that I thought was really interesting. So I took $100 million jackpot bonus thing on one of those winning lotteries just to kind of joke around and play with it. And what I paid in federal income tax was ridiculous. And you pay twice. You would pay once on the initial, and then you pay the second time, right? Because it's part of your income for that year. But then you looked across what we pay in this state for someone who were to win $100 million. It is ridiculous that our state receives nothing in that, but our federal government takes their fair share.
Right.
And so I think we need to take a really good look at what we're doing here for that bracket of people who are in that tax bracket. If I was there, I'd want to pay my fair share because I know it goes into things that are necessary. So there's my spiel.
Yeah,
You know,
Juan, before you jump off, I so appreciate that. We would love to speak. We may even be able to come down and do it, depending on the day, but we could be there in person. The other thing that I would say, we're working right now on a rural outreach plan, talking with Glenn McLean, and we're going to invest in that. And one thing that we really can use that you can do that's going to be really meaningful is talk to your fellow superintendents about it, about how we're making it as easy as possible to get involved, that we need the Colorado Rural Schools Alliance and the CASE and CASB to endorse this and get their people engaged. And yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be a very, very helpful. That's just that buzz is really, really important. And
at the Southern
we'll
Super.
have fact sheets for every district that will
Yeah.
show this is the benefit that could come from it. This is how many people are actually going to be paying. So we'll work with you in any way, but just talk amongst your colleagues. That would be huge.
I was already pretty vocal at the Southern Soup Conference.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So, and it was more about, we got to do something to help ourselves because, I come from a state where I almost feel like every year we're like holding on, right? Ever since I've been here, every single year it's, well, we don't really know, and we're gonna have to see what happens. And then it's public ed who seems to be getting kicked about this every single time. And then we have to wait and hold on and wait and hold on. And then it's one of those, okay, well, we're gonna do it, but it's gonna be this way. And then there's promises and nothing gets done. And then the next year we're back up for discussion again. This is ridiculous. We've got too many things within public education that need to be funded. And I think with the declining enrollments, we are losing kids, and they're not because they're moving out of state, but we've made it too easy for people to choose not being in public ed versus either homeschooling or moving in another direction, whether it's, private schools or whatever that might be. I think we've got to do something to reinvest back into the public education system to provide better resources and to encourage schools to have highly qualified teachers so that people feel like they're getting what they're supposed to be getting with their funds. So just my take. And again,
Amen.
I don't really know much more than that.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Juan. We'll be in touch, obviously.
Appreciate you. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Love that guy.
Yeah.
He
it was
brought
awesome.
up a interesting